They will be sharing what it is like living with borderline personality disorder. Please note that this talk also discusses struggles with mental health. If you feel the need to step out during this talk or now, please take a minute to do so. Now, let's give a warm welcome for Claire Benedict.
I looked ahead and saw a cascade of boulders up the mountain, so insurmountable that I slumped down on the trail and started to cry. My best friend and my sister were farther along, jumping between rocks, smiling, laughing. We had already hiked a couple miles in the treacherous terrain. My legs were tired. But that is not what led me to collapse in the dirt. My entire being was exhausted, and I felt terribly sick. Everything felt so terribly wrong. I was on an exciting trip with my two best friends, within a gorgeous setting. Yet I couldn't move another step. The dichotomy seemed glaring. Why do I feel like this? Why can't I be happy? What is wrong with me? What is wrong with me? On and off for years, I had felt like this, flooded with rapidly changing emotions and moods, engulfed by difficulties in relationships, both with myself and with others, and overwhelmed with feelings of despair and hopelessness. I was mentally ill, but I didn't know the cause. This is extremely hard for me to grapple with, as I try to be as logical and pragmatic as possible. See, I am going to pursue a PhD in organic chemistry, a field where I will tirelessly gather data, make hypotheses, seek answers. Yet this personal problem seems so incongruent, so inexplicable. I was further troubled by these symptoms as I had little trauma or hardship growing up, what psychologists call adverse childhood experiences. I don't have a reason or excuse to feel this way, I told myself over and over. Others have it way worse. 2 weeks after faltering on that mountain, I was in the hospital. It was there that I was diagnosed with borderline personality disorder. It seemed somewhat understandable now that I could label it. It wasn't an overwhelming, all-encompassing oblivion any longer. Now I knew of others who had fought and won. I'm here tonight to explain what living with borderline personality disorder is like. I'm here tonight being vulnerable and sharing my experience, along with the science, to hopefully reach out and connect with one person. That person is me, 2 years ago, who couldn't see a way out. I'm here tonight to tell you, Claire, along with those fighting the same battle, that there's always hope. We are fighting, however gritty and ugly and hard it is, and we can win. According to the DSM-5, the standard for classifying mental disorders, borderline personality disorder, or BPD, involves difficulties in relationships, impulsive and self-damaging behavior, identity and mood disturbance, and affective instability. Research has found that suicide occurs in up to 10% of BPD cases. That is a rate 50 times greater than the average population. I want to explain how I've experienced BPD, but I also want to note that it is a varied illness, and not all cases look the same. I go between extreme opposites. My emotions are roller coasters. I feel ecstatic one moment, and then hopeless the next. They move and change before my brain can process the reasons or triggers. It is hard to understand what is normal, as everything feels like an emergency. The baseline shifts. When I was in the hospital, I switched into research mode. I read study after study about the condition and was interested by the symptom that affected me most frequently: emotional dysregulation. Research has found a clear link between BPD and many dimensions of emotional dysregulation, including lower emotional clarity, greater non-acceptance and avoidance of emotions, and greater inability to control behavior in the context of distressing emotions. I started learning about something called dialectical behavior therapy. Studies have shown that dialectical behavior therapy is effective in the treatment of BPD and reduces suicide risk in individuals with BPD. One study found that after a year of treatment, more than 75% of individuals with BPD no longer met the diagnostic criteria for the disease. With respect to emotional dysregulation, dialectical behavior therapy employs something called the opposite action skill. All emotions activate us to respond, and this type of activation is biologically wired. Using the opposite action skill, one can choose to respond opposite from what your biological response would activate you to do. This takes practice. Let's go through an example together. Say you're angry. This emotion activates us to attack or defend. Using the opposite action skill, you would show kindness and concern, or walk away. This seems simple, but it's something I've had to practice every single day. When I'm overwhelmed with emotion, it is difficult to rationalize what to do, even in simple matters. Emotions are transient, always changing, and there's a point where emotional regulation turns into dysregulation. I recently came across a poem written by Coral Moore, and I want to share a little bit of it with you tonight. It goes like this. They call me borderline, like an insult, but I know how it feels to be limitless. Women who feel in extremes are often taught to be quiet about our grief. Our top control, contortion, a bonsai bent into impossible positions. The contortionist curls herself into a glass box. Look how small she can become. Watch as her bones turn into cartilage, and as she disappears entirely, all around the doctors gasp, as if they did not intend to make her this way. It is important we talk about BPD, just like other mental disorders, to address the stigma surrounding it. The Ontario Ministry of Health conducted a study about this very phenomenon. It was found that the label of BPD is enough to change the behavior of treatment providers. The study looked at nurses' responses to hypothetical patients with BPD and schizophrenia. It was found that that nurses were more likely to respond sympathetic towards patients with schizophrenia, while making belittling or contradicting responses to statements made by patients with BPD. The stereotype of people with BPD is that they are manipulative. Sometimes this causes treatment providers to distance themselves or pull away from the patient. However, this only exacerbates the problem, as the criterion of a BPD diagnosis involves frantic efforts to avoid real or imagined abandonment. This creates a negative feedback loop of enhanced self-loathing and self-destructive behaviors. A study by Lawn and colleagues found that 58% of people with BPD reported experiencing high levels of anxiety due to discrimination associated with their BPD diagnosis. And 71% felt that they were not being taken seriously by health practitioners. I'm called borderline because I'm the border between extremes, the threshold. The sea can be turbulent in the morning and in the evening, smooth as glass. I'm weathered now. I've made it through the storm, and I know how to survive the next. Do I think there is a purpose to all of this? To be honest, I'm not quite sure. I feel that I've learned a lot about the complexity of human emotions. It is quite beautiful that we get such a vast and diverse experience here on Earth. However, mental illness needs to be treated. I'm not here to glorify it. But it's okay not to be okay. I say this so personally, as it breaks my heart to think that there are people struggling in silence. I never want that to be you. So please, reach out to a loved one, your family, your friends, your doctor, your therapist. The National Suicide and Crisis Lifeline number is 988. there is always someone to talk, and there is always hope. Listening to other stories and experiences is crucial in understanding. Love, however, can be given no matter what. Let us learn to love both ourselves and others. Thank you.